Welcome to Meditating with John Vervaeke. We're going to live stream today and tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be a significant review of philosophical contemplative companionship. Then we're going to switch to a weekly schedule. We will be meeting every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The Discord server is going to continue to have its meditation and contemplative practices. I believe they do 2 sits every day. They also do group Lectio Divina. They're going to house and home the philosophical contemplative companionships. There's excellent discussion. So I'm hoping that the Sangha will move there and find a new and vibrant home there. We are going to have that first lesson from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on September the 12th. The first of the new lessons will be on September the 12th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. At the end of every session, as you know, there have been Q&A. We'll have one today, we'll have one tomorrow. Please limit the questions at that time to anything from the entire ecology of practice, whether it's from the Eastern traditions or the Western traditions. There will also be, of course, significant Q&A time on the Saturday meetings. We should come up with a new name for those. We'll try and think of an interesting and provocative one. If you have more general questions, you can bring those to the live stream general Q&A that's going to be the third Friday of this month, which is September the 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're joining us for the first time, this is probably all very strange. Don't be put off by it. Please note that we have actually done 110 classes. This is our 110th class. So there's a lot for you to learn. So please go to the description for this video. Take a look at the links for previous lessons and sits. Do lesson 1 right away. I would recommend 1 or 2 lessons every week, and then you'll catch up, meet on the Discord server. The links are also in the description, and you will be able to continue learning this practice, learning this ecology of practices, I should say, as well as being able to join this really wonderful Sangha that has formed around this online streaming course. All right, so today it's just going to be a regular day. We are going to begin with chanting, then we'll go into silent sit. We'll have some time for some questions and observations, edifications at the end, and then that will be it for today. Reminder that tomorrow we'll probably go a little bit longer because I'm going to do a significant review of the philosophical contemplative companionships. We'll have the whiteboard up again and everything. We are experimenting today with some new software and 2 cameras, which we will be making use of more extensively tomorrow. So please be patient with us as we work out the bugs. When we get this working smoothly, it will definitely improve the quality of the lessons that will be given on Saturday. All right, everybody, please come into your basic posture, set your phones on Do Not Disturb, and we will begin together when I say begin. Begin. One. Om. One. Begin your silent sit. Slowly come out of your practice, trying as best you can to integrate what you cultivated in your practice with your everyday consciousness, cognition, character, and communitas, perhaps by reciting the 5 promises to yourself. So let's see if there's any questions or concerns or comments. It's just coming up now. So we have a question from Mark. Welcome, as always, Mark. How are contemplation and savoring related? Are they the same, or do you overlap? Does one require the other? Are there specific practice differences? So I think of contemplation and meditation as basically attentional, where we're directing our attention, and contemplation is seeing through, where savoring has more to do with opening up affectively with an affect, right? Affectively opening up your awareness, so that there is more coming in through sense, and more coming in through imagination, more coming in from imagination, the perception, the prehending, more sight, more insight, etc. And so I suppose that there could be savoring. I hadn't thought about this question. I hadn't really put it together taxonomically. So that's why I'm going through this carefully. I suppose, though, that savoring is possible both within meditation, because you can be opening up, right? You're making the flow of intelligibility, you're getting into the flow of intelligibility more, and you could be doing that inwardly directed in meditation, outwardly directed in contemplation. So I think savoring is more basic practice in the sense that it gets us into a joy-filled conformity with being, and that being, of course, can be unfolding within in meditation, and without in contemplation, or withal in prajna. And so and that's why I think there is traditionally a state of bliss associated with the non-duality of prajna, and that would make sense given what we're working through together now, because the bliss would be not the savoring of not meditative savoring or contemplative savoring, but the savoring of non-duality, sort of the pure being, pure savoring of pure being. So that's how I think I would try to put those together. I think more reflection, theoretical reflection, is needed on that. But yeah, I mean, the problem with it is, of course, is that attention and awareness are bound and interpenetrate each other within consciousness. Um, but yes, meditation and contemplation seem to be directional, and that brings in attention, whereas savoring seems to be awareness. It seems to be sensitizing and sensing the flow of intelligibility. Victoria, it's good to see you, Victoria. How often do I practice premeditatio malorium? This is a Stoic practice, and we will talk about when we get to the lessons. This is the practice of imagining, and we're going to talk about the fact that Stoicism is not dour. There's a lot of imagination, and there's a lot of the imaginal and we'll talk about imaginary and imaginal again in depth within Stoic practices. It's the practice of, like, when you're seeing your son, like let's say for me, seeing my son, maybe kissing him goodnight, saying, I may lose him tomorrow, I may never see him again. Some people do a more specific version of the practice. They get an object that they really like, they spend time with it, they develop affection for it, and then they break it as a way. And so what you're doing is practicing encountering, so premeditatio, ahead of time, thinking about, but also meditating upon ahead of time, loss. So I don't do it that often in the sense of doing it with specific people, but I do tend to do it daily, and that I have a reflection in which I consider the fatality of all things. And I don't consider it just intellectually. I meditate on it. I really let it resonate into me, how all things have a permanent, their existence isn't permanent, but as long as they exist, there's an aspect of them that is forever independent from my narratives, my project, the meanings of my life. So I do that on a fairly regular basis, pretty much almost a daily basis. I found that seems to me to be, and I think this is just a personality difference, so I'm not recommending it in general. I think that version of the practice for me seems to grab me more than the individual ones that tend to be emotionally startling, but they don't tend to orient me towards the general sense of it. But I readily acknowledge that I could see it being completely reverse for other people. That doing the more specific version of the premeditatio could really be powerfully symbolic of the fatality of all things at large. So I hope that answered your question, Victoria. Maybe I should go back to the more specific practice more regularly for a while and see, give it a taste and a try for a while. Kira Kroger, hi Kira, observation. I regularly have felt the experience of contraction in my body, and then I mentally recoil from the contraction. During yoga today on Discord, I realized that I can breathe into the contraction, like it was breathing into a stretch in yoga. That felt interesting. That's very good. So yoga, of course, means ultimately to yoke, conjugal. It's da'ath, it's to be wedded, it's to be coupled. And if we can do that, if we can couple to body armor in the way you're describing, that's a very powerful way of befriending yourself, of coming into a deeper wedding to oneself. And I don't mean in the narcissistic, oh, I'm so wonderful and unique and special and the universe is here just for me, and all that bullshit. What I mean is, what we've been talking about throughout, the befriending of oneself. So I carry a lot of body armor here, on the left side of my body. Some of it has to do with sort of historical psychodynamic trauma. Some of it has to do with the ongoing sense that there's a part of my brain that's hypervigilant about the Meniere's in my left ear. And of course, I can't ignore it because it's always ringing. There's always the pain and the pressure. And so doing exactly what we're talking about, Kara, moving into that contraction and that resistance. The way it rebounds, and this is the befriending, the way it rebounds into my psyche and discloses aspects of my psyche and opens me up. It's very hard to put into sort of concrete terms, but it's a very powerful experience. It goes from being physical, mental, all right, there's physical thing that has sort of a mental aspect, to reverberating and being much more mental and existential. And it's a very powerful experience. So I'm glad that you are getting a taste of this, and I encourage you to continue to pursue that as a way of befriending yourself. Algernon Timos. Hi, Algernon. In meta meditation, I include the whole of humanity and the ecosystem it is interbuilt with. This feeling of oneness seems at odds with the concept of countries and modern life. Suggestion? That being at odds is a good thing. So one thing to do is to step back and embrace that. Countries are extensions of egocentric orientation. My country, our country. It's that. And of course, we need countries, etc. I'm not some sort of crypto anarchist. At least I don't think I am. But when you get to the meta and that all falls away and it's odd, what you're recognizing, what you're recognizing, what's coming into awareness is that way of thinking isn't actually part of the nature of things, the countries and the divisions. And so what seemed natural and habitual and inevitable is disclosed to being conventional, constructed, and malleable. That doesn't mean it's evil or illusory. That's a mistake that people too often leap to. Oh, because it's changeable and malleable, right? Therefore it's not real. So coming to the awareness that mode isn't the same thing as the order of things is a profound thing. Giving all of that as hopefully an affording context, savor the sense of the oddness, meditate into it, inquiring mindfulness, unpack it, let it teach you, let it draw you, let it adduce from you further realizations. Try to savor the difference. Information is the difference that makes a difference. Savor that difference and how it is transforming you. Rainer Ludwig. Thanks, John, for opening so many new exciting doors for me. Your teachings have enriched my life in my retirement, and I'm looking forward to continuing the journey of self-exploration with you. Thank you, Rainer, for sharing that, and thank you for your commitment and encouragement, and thank you for reminding us that there's a reframing happening here, where there's going to be a continuity of practice, but we're shifting to a different way in which it unfolds. Rahad Jonas, question. I captured myself recently paraphrasing some facts while sharing them or adding some individual uniqueness to them. I promised myself in every practice to be mindful of my speech. Do you think this is enough for now to deal with this? Definitely. Remember, don't hold yourself to harsh perfectionism, but to virtuous friendship. But yes, I think setting the intent, but perhaps setting it through the day. And sometimes it's good to pick one of the promises and make that what you're going to especially pay attention to throughout the day. But I think celebrate that. So the temptation when we note these things is to right? But instead say, oh great, I'm starting to do it. I'm starting to become more mindful of my speech. I'm starting to realize I'm doing these things. For a while, just be satisfied, take that cautiously, be satisfied with just catching it and noticing it. And then what will happen is and just encourage it, and wow, this is good, and encourage it, and keep doing it, and keep looking for it, and make it a pleasurable experience, a learning experience, not one that's reflecting on your character, but one that is reflecting on your growth. And then after you've gotten a more reliable sense of being able to catch that and witness it, then try to catch it earlier. Try, like you know how we like when you're doing inquiring mindfulness and you're trying to catch the earliest and earliest inception of conception, right? And try and catch it earlier and earlier, increase your sensitivity. And then you'll get to a place where you've caught it early enough that you steer around it. And it's not this huge, oh no! It's like, oh. So that's my recommendation for going forward on that. Deborah Wagstaff, observation, experienced quite a few solutions to struggle in these silent minutes today. That's really wonderful. That's really wonderful. So this is one of the ways in which your Buddha nature is starting to come forth, to grow and to be born within you, and it's one of the ways in which you can experience befriending yourself. So celebrate it, and thank you for sharing that. Alexei Simonov. Hello, Alexei. It's good to hear from you again. Question: what is the right balance between self-reflection, meditation, and action? Recently, I enjoyed physical practices and scale sitting head practices. I'm not quite clear on what the last thing is referring to, but I have a sense of what your question is. So, this is something I talked about in the series, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. There's the problem, we face two extremes that we want to get away from. Impulsivity, in which we just act on impulse. Vellman calls this being a wanton, like wanton behavior. And Frankfurt uses a similar idea. And the problem with impulsivity is it works at cross purposes. It works against itself. And so we lose agency. And so we practice forms of reflection and meditation, and we withdraw from action into contemplation. And what we get is we get some space and some freedom from that impulsivity. And we start to be able to organize our impulses so that they're not at cross purposes, and we reduce our inner conflict. But you can withdraw too much, in which you are the reflection is upon reflection. Like you can get to you, and Vellman talks about like Hamlet as this masterful work of art about a person who is so reflecting upon his reflections of his reflections that he has disconnected himself from the machinery of agency. He's so uncoupled himself that he can't get a momentum of action going. He becomes withdrawn. The Buddha warned about a similar thing in which people use meditation as a form of spiritual bypassing. We've talked about this, spiritual bypassing, in which what they're doing is to escape into kind of the contentedness of like a cabbage or a clod of earth, because they have so withdrawn from the connection. And so the idea is, right, that we want, and it's like, well, I'll be a Canadian and I will find the average point, the middle point between them. And the problem is that's not right either. So what you need is a dynamical, constantly shifting. You need something that brings with it the flexibility of reflection, but the coupling contact of impulsivity. And this is where Taoism is especially helpful, although Stoicism and Epicureanism can help us out here as well, because Taoism argues for something between reactivity of the wanton and the reflexivity of the Hamlet character, and so between reactivity and too much reflexivity is what they call spontaneity. So when you're acting spontaneously, you have awareness, you have a coherence, and you have a flexibility to your action, but it is still engaged and coupled to the world. And spontaneity, of course, is a way of activating and accentuating and, in some senses, accelerating the flow experience that we're all capable of having. And part of what these practices are doing in general, this is not the only thing they're doing, but part of what they are doing is taking the flow experience and increasing our cognitive flexibility and our cognitive power such that the scope and the depth of flow opens up broadly. Stephen Batchelor, in fact, argues that he proposes that the Buddha's enlightenment is to be comprehensively in a state of flow. And this seems very similar to what the Taoist sages are. So what you're trying to do is toggle your practices, and you're right, they have a compensatory relationship to each other, so you're constantly moving between right, the extremes of automatic reflexivity and overly active reactivity and overactive reflexivity, and so you're trying to steer between them and get the optimal grip, and you're trying to get that and expand that optimal grip so that capacity to flow becomes more and more a way of life and a way of being. So I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to more questions and observations tomorrow. We will be going longer tomorrow, so please remember that. Thank you everyone for joining. I want to thank you to my dear friend and technomage Amar, my beloved son Jason. They're doing a lot behind the scenes making this all work. Please subscribe to the channel to be notified of the next video. Please follow me on Twitter for updates about these streams. Please point others to this series in order to help them. It's very important that if you can, you join the Discord server so you can keep up the daily meditative practice. The single most powerful predictor of you continuing with a course of growth and an ecology of practice is if you are in Sangha, if you are doing it with other people. So please get on the Discord server to keep this up, find other discussion groups, find the yoga and other moving practices, the group Lectio Divina, and as I said, the Discord server is working out how to home philosophical contemplative companionships, which we will review tomorrow. So, please remember that continuity of practice is more important than sheer quantity of practice. Don't hold yourself to the standard of a harsh perfectionism, but to a virtuous friendship, because there is no enemy, that harshness, worse than your own mind and body, but there is no friend, no ally, no true contemplative companion on the path better than your own mind and body. Be lamps unto yourselves and to each other. Take good care. I'll see you all tomorrow.